What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at the companions as part of Warhammer 40k Dark Heresy's beta, which went live probably just a couple hours before this video is going live, and I'm able to bring you this because I had access to that beta a few days before its announcement at Warhammer Skulls today, May 21st. Now, I wanted to cover the companions in a separate video from my impressions video, which should already be up, talking about the beta as a whole, and that's because there are honestly quite a few companions in the beta. However, we have varying levels of information about each one of them, and this is because the companion romances and like most of their companion quests are not in the beta. That will be a thing as part of the full game, mind you, but some of that characterization that would normally be here is simply not. And yet, I still wanted to go over the companions and talk about what we do know. And so, let's go ahead and dive right into that. Right as we start the beta, we pick up our three main companions for our warband, or our group of people here, starting with our sanctioned psyker pal, Saro. Maybe Saro, I'm not sure, but either way, this character is a sanctioned psyker as part of the Inquisition, which is a little awkward if you yourself choose to be a sanctioned psyker, because then there's two of you. Either way, however, all of our companions, not just this guy, will have a unique ability as part of their own background, which is unique to each individual companion. So even if you do the same thing, they will have something unique that makes it a bit different. In Saro's case here, he has the ability to rhyme his pyromancy, which basically is using his abilities in a certain way to produce greater effects. That's unique to him. For instance, he has this rhymes unspoken ability that allows him to rhyme his next psychic power, which makes it cost more action points, but at the start of their next turn, that ability will proc again against that same target just instantly, disregarding all of the usual activation things like line of sight you have to worry about. Now, in terms of what we know about this guy, not a ton. The gist of it seems to be that he's a relatively, I would say, sort of soft-spoken kind of guy who's very concerned about the other psychers that are a member of the Inquisition, as, you know, heresy is obviously what they are there to stomp out, and so psychers can certainly find themselves the target of that kind of thing, and so Saro here seems to make the attempt, at the very least, to concern himself with others' well-being in that sense. Now, then we have, I believe it's Epione, who I have taken to calling EpiPen. This is our medic, basically. So she is one of the other ones that we basically start with, and as our medic, more or less, she is all about those healing abilities. Now, she can be used for combat as well, as she has the base soldier archetype, which gives her some proficiencies with various guns and abilities therein, and also provides her some much-needed movement that's going to allow her to move around and get close to people. So she can also get abilities that reduce the AP cost and stuff of actual medkits, but she even gets some abilities that directly allow her to just heal by default, such as combat surgery. She also gets some abilities to like remove status effects and the like, and so she has some utility as well as healing capabilities, which is what she's all about. Now, she has a ton of research into all sorts of stuff, typically around that. We see the very first hints of her quest, but we don't actually get to partake in them, as she mentions having something to do in Maris Portum, but that quest doesn't pop up, so hard to say what it actually is. But if you want a healer, this is your gal, it would seem. Next up, we've got Haymar. Hailing from the jungle death world of Catachan, this guy is basically Rambo, which from what I understand is kind of the point of Catachan. He is your heavy soldier assault type, joins you pretty much right away, and he's all about using guns and even his combat knife to just destroy as many people as possible, to really try to take command of the battlefield. Now, that said, he is also a soldier archetype, but has extra abilities for doing things like using grenades, but also extra hit chance with like heavy weapons, and you might want to keep that in mind because one of his passive abilities is Catachan Jungle Fighter, and you have to turn that off if you want him to use heavy weapons with that increased hit chance, but also move, because he gets way reduced movement points while that is active, so it's a thing you want to remember to turn off and on. But otherwise, doing things like using heavy weapons and some general utility around stuff like grenades, or depending on your specialization, maybe even cutting through armor, is kind of what his general role is. But unsurprisingly, personality-wise, definitely seems to be the rough and tumble soldier type that we all know about. But a much more interesting character, I would say, is actually this guy. I believe it's Touma, with the mechanical legs. Now, this guy was an Inquisition interrogator, so the way he's presented in the beta is a little bit strange, and what I mean by that is that you start the beta clearly having some history with this guy that isn't exactly amicable, let's say, and yet, as part of the beta, you can potentially team up with this guy, and he can potentially join you kind of through that avenue. He joins you temporarily at first, and then there is an option to take him on permanently as well. And so there's an interesting sort of power dynamic there, because it is implied that this guy used to be your superior at one point, but is no longer thanks to whatever happened in the prologue, which we don't know the full story of just yet. Either way, however, Touma here has the officer background, which is basically great at improving the abilities of others, giving them the occasional extra turn here and there, and he himself hails from the Scala Progenium, basically to say he is an orphan of an officer or a noble previously, and has himself been trained into an officer by that branch of the Adepta Ministerium. Interesting guy all around. Then there is what will surely be a fan favorite, Cogg. Cogg is an Ogren who was assigned to a unit that was in Maris Portum. We can find him, having been the only seemingly survivor of that unit, and take him into our service. A bit of a lovable oaf, if you will. Not the brightest, though he is brighter than most Ogren, thanks to his special cranial implant. He still isn't the smartest of the bunch. His role basically seems to be a tank and melee damage, though he does have the ability to do things with weapons and everything, and he gets unique equipment for being an Ogren. He is a warrior archetype, which primarily sees him up front in melee combat. He takes up 4 squares, he can be used as cover, he gets the ability to smash a lot of stuff, and he's just your big melee tank guy is basically the gist of it. Gets a lot of defensive abilities, and is overall a pretty cool guy. But we do have a handful of others to talk about. 5, as a matter of fact, and these are the ones that we do not get so immediately, and as a result are, to be honest with you, a little more interesting. One of my personal favorites next up is Raakti, I believe her name is. This character is a Kroot, an alien race that basically eats the corpses of others to take their genes unto themselves and kind of adapt as a result. Now, the interesting thing about Kroot is that they are sort of thematically similar to the Tyranids, as you would probably guess just from the description, because the Tyranids consume things and evolve and all that, but they are a bit different. Namely, they are not controlled by a hive mind like the Tyranids, and they don't eat Tyranids as a result, and it's really much more about very specific and controlled evolution. Either way, you can pick up Raakti as part of the events in Maris Portum with a group of Kroot that is calling that place home. Initially mute, she will eventually talk to you, which is a lot of fun, as she isn't exactly super helpful in your investigation as a result, but can be recruited afterwards, and as an operative, and obviously very skilled with rifles and sniper rifles and stuff as a result. This is a great backline character that is great at just sort of dismantling the defenses on a specific character, and she gets some unique abilities around using these like little Xenos Raven type things in combat. She can have them come down and damage enemies, cause bleeding, blind them, that kind of thing. So there's that as well. Now, our second Xenos companion is Laarthyr. We already have seen this guy previously as well. He joins you in Maris Portum as part of your investigation there, and then if you help him out with his quest, he will join you on a more permanent basis. Laarthyr here is a Wayseeker from the Eldari. This actually comes with his own unique both archetype and background in his case. His archetype, the Wayseeker, is basically the mystic, but with some extra stuff specific to the Wayseeker, giving them a mix of psychic abilities as well as utility with the Eldari equipment that is unique to them as well. And by the way, the Kroot Raakti also gets some unique equipment, but Laarthyr is here investigating some oddities in the Empyrean and is your typical haughty Eldari, but is willing to work with people like the Inquisition if they can help him in his goals, and the Inquisition, being the Inquisition, has the ability to not immediately kill them, as should have been obvious with people like the Kroot on our team. But those are plenty of the companions that we've already known about, but there are a couple much more interesting ones that have been involved in the beta specifically that I wanted to take the time to go over. Now, we have a little less information on these ones. They join you as part of the events. There's 3 of them that I want to talk about. We have a bit of information on each. But let's start with the Tech Priest. We are getting a Tech Priest companion known as Hypatia, and unfortunately, you just recruit this character. You go up, talk to her, and she's instantly recruited, and the reason for this being the companion quests aren't in, like I said, and so you don't really get much build-up. She's just immediately recruited, and her character portrait is obviously not final as well. That said, this character is going to be of the warrior archetype, and is part of the Magos biologist within the Adeptus Mechanicus. In particular, this gives her a few unique abilities, mostly revolving around things like poison, and as a warrior up front in close combat, you can also, thanks to her augments, dual-wield two-handed weapons. So if you want to have the two-handed Omnissiah axe, as well as say like a two-handed rifle or whatever, you can definitely do that. Overall, nice to have a Tech Priest with us. I'm curious what the situation will be there. We just don't have a lot of information about her beyond the fact that we're getting a Tech Priest just because of the way they introduced her. Now, my personal favorite of the companions we messed around with was actually Discordance. Discordance is super interesting because she is a blank. A blank is somebody who actively represses the psychic and immaterium around them. That is to say, the warp and chaos. Blanks, just by their very existence, passively shut all of that down if it is around them. This tends to seep into their own personality, however, and as a result, people find themselves not wanting to be around Discordance, but their unique abilities make them an extreme asset to the Inquisition, as is demonstrated via her recruitment. Now, she also doesn't have a finalized portrait, but does get some unique abilities as part of both their operative archetype and the pariah background, which is the blank thing. And in particular, probably the most dramatic thing this character does is that in combat within a realm of influence, that is to say a few tiles around this character, psyker abilities just do not work, including yours if you are next to her, and you have to keep that in mind if you want to use this character. But this can also be used, of course, against enemy psychers by simply maneuvering this character close up, and she gets some abilities around her pariah status as trying to like force characters out of her immediate range, which can trigger attacks of opportunities, which she gets some abilities to make use of by dealing direct health damage, bypassing armor when she does this, and even just some general damage. And you combine that with some of the demoralization effects, and you can even start demoralizing the enemy really well. This is a really cool character. She is a little abrasive and doesn't seem to want to be with you, but I'm very curious to see where this character goes over the course of the game. My favorite by far. And then last but not least, we have none other than Aspyce Corda. Now that might sound familiar if you've played Rogue Trader, and this is because it is the same Aspyce Corda that is the Rogue Trader of the Corda dynasty, the predecessor to Incendia. Which means we already know a bit about everything she's about, which is to say heresy. Aspyce is known to have gotten up to some dangerous things, in fact being described as just a regular old pirate in many cases. She is nonetheless an officer archetype and has the Rogue Trader background, which grants her access to all sorts of stuff, namely messing around with that influence mechanic again, as well as the ability to be a dual-wielding specialist, regardless of its requirements, as an example. So in combat, an officer type and can get a whole host of abilities and stuff. Now, I'm curious what they're going to do with this narratively, if they will bring any of her sort of Rogue Trader empire to bear, but as it stands, very cool character to see. You pick her up as part of a dispute between nobles where she is one of the people who is initially a suspect for a murder that takes place, which was a lot of fun. But that, as it stands, is all of the companions I could find as part of the beta, which includes several we did not know about previously. And just to end it on a fun note, it has already been confirmed by Owlcat via some questions me and other creators were able to ask them that this is not all of the companions. There will be more. There are some we do not know about, but they've already introduced some really cool ones, and I'm interested in seeing where these guys go in particular. But that is going to do it for today. Certainly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.